Right, good morning, everyone. This is my first proper chance to record a proper lesson, so bear with me. Okay, I have a couple of young kids in here now as well, so I might be interrupted, but such is life. So this is going to be 15 minutes max. If I go over it, well, so be it. But all I can do is 15 minutes. So let's just see what we get on in 15 minutes. I'm going to break labor up into three different parts. All right. So this will be the first part of labor, essentially looking at the diagrams drawn as labor supply curve, labor demand curve, and equilibrium. And then there's a few other bits and pieces involved in it. Okay. As we've known, labour is one of the factors of production, and what we're trying to do here, it's production of wealth. This is the whole point of our system in some ways. Call it what you want. Okay, I'm going to try and skip over a lot of the theory. To be honest with you, there's a lot of theory here in this, but to be honest with you, it's pretty straightforward to read, and I think it's a waste of time me going through this theory, essentially reading a book. Okay, and theories such as what is labour and what is the demand for labour. Like at the end of the day, why does a firm hire people? And why do they hire as many people as they hire? Well, again, wage rate. Okay, if the wage rate is high, they'll hire less people. If the wage rate is low, they'll hire less people. The demand for a firm's output is obvious. If they're selling a lot, they'll want more people. Other factor production, again, we talk about capital, we talk about interest rates, we talk about land, we talk about all these other things. Government incentives, is there an incentive to hire people? Is there an incentive, is there a minimum wage situation there? Is there an incentive to hire young people? So all of these things are obvious, they're all in the book, and I kind of want to skip through them all right? These are more stuff as well, new technology, we've talked about that, Jesus, like, if you can automate your process, you're not going to hire people. Taxation levels is obvious, state subsidies, same thing. Expectations of the future, entrepreneurs, especially when we look at what they're expecting to sell in the future. Do they need to hire people now in the expectation that they'll sell more? Okay, really what I want to get into, supply of labor. I told you it's going to be a bit funny. So with the demand is obviously supply. The demand is demanded by the employers. The supply is dependent on people like me and you. Why do we supply our labor? So what's the number one reason why I work in a school? Not because I love my job and I love doing online teaching, is because I get paid. Okay, all of these are different things, and you can go through these in all detail. Okay, size of the population, wage, participation rate, how many people participate in the economy, what's the labor force like, etc. Number of hours worked. Labor mobility is something that we're going to look at on our third session, I think, for this one. Okay. And really what I want to get into is I want to look at this thing called the labor supply curve and labor demand curve. So I'm going to shoot into something else here now. So the labor demand curve and the supply curve is like any normal supply and demand curve. Okay. It depends on two variables. Number one is money, and number two is quantity. So as we draw this, we're going to look at the demand curve for labor. You need to be able to draw these. Okay. So what we're going to look at, we're going to look at the demand first. First one is with the demand curve for labor. So what you're looking at is you're looking at money. And essentially, this is the wage that people like me and you are given when we work, or the wage that people are going to pay us. And the other thing you're going to look at on the y-axis or the x-axis is the quantity of labor. Okay. And what does a normal demand curve look like? A normal demand curve looks like that. Normal demand curve. Now, what does this say? This says at this point here, high wage rate, low demand. If the wage rate is really low, this is good for employers because now they can hire loads of people at a lower wage rate. So that'll be, I suppose, again, just going back to this. This is wage one. This is, get out of here. Oh, I've just undone something there. This is quantity one, and this is wage two, and this is quantity two, as you can see. So it's pretty straightforward. High wages, me as an employer is not going to want to hire people. If the wage is low, I'm going to hire a lot of people. But of course, the opposite works for us, people like, again, me and you who work. So what do we have? We have a supply curve that looks like that. Again, watch your axis. We're not looking at money necessarily here. We're looking at wages. And down here, we're looking at the quantity of labor. So what's happening? Do you want to work? Do you right now want to work for low pay? Not really. If pay is really low, the demand is going to be really low. Wage one, Q1. Whereas if the wage is high, are you going to want to work? Well, obviously you're going to want to work. And that brings us down here to Q2. So it's a normal kind of supply and demand curve that you would see for products or anything else like that. Okay. And for us, we're supply. So that's us. Demand curve is them. Okay. They're the employees. They're the employers. We're the employees. Right. Let's get back to this thing. So let's get back to the supply curve. So again, we're just going to belt through this pretty straightforwardly. Okay, but again, it's something you need to draw. So you need to be able to draw that. What's the wage rate? What's the quantity of labor, etc. Okay, and what you're going to eventually get is you're going to get the equilibrium wage rate. Okay, and the equilibrium wage rate is going to look like this. It's where demand of labor and supply of labor meet, and where they meet. And again, you're going to need to draw this. So we come down here, equilibrium wage rate, and there's our supply, S1. Change color all the time. Go away, you. There's D for D1. Oh, why is that done that? This is done D. D for demand, and that's demand 1. Okay, what have we forgotten? Well, we've forgotten a few simple things. Number 1 is we've forgotten here, and we've forgotten here. This is labor, or this is the wage rate, should I say? And this is quantity of labor. So where's our equilibrium point? Our equilibrium point is obviously right about here. And that is going to be our equilibrium point. Just come straight down here. Here's your dotted lines. That's QE. Dunk, 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 dunk. And that's our wage equilibrium. So this point right here is where the supply of labor and the demand of labor should be. Now, this doesn't work in a perfect world. This doesn't work in a normal world. This is a perfect world, should I say. So what's happening in this situation? Well, the equilibrium wage rate, let's have a look. Blah, 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 blah. Equilibrium wage rate, we kind of know that ourselves. Okay. This only really occurs in a free market. Okay. This only occurs if supply and demand are free to float, but that doesn't happen in reality. Because what is reality? Well, in reality, people want more money for different jobs. Unions are getting involved. There's different taxes for different people at different wage rates. There's legislation out there, legislation such as the minimum wage rate. There's legislation such as the amount of hours you can work. The situations where we have migrant workers coming in maybe at a lower wage rate than the equilibrium wage rate. And then there's different equilibrium rates for different industries. Okay, I'm going to show you 2 examples of this. Now, ideally now this is you, as you finish your Leaving Cert and go on into the jobs market, how are you going to maximize your income? Well, you should be looking for a job that has high demand and low supply. High demand for it, but there's a low supply. So high demand, low supply gives you high wage. You can look at that with your slimline in the band chart, such as an athlete. So someone who plays soccer, there's a huge demand for them, but there's a relatively low supply of skilled soccer players who can play from the Premiership. That's why their salaries are extremely inflated. Just have a look at this, for example. So you have the Department of Health Secretary, this fellow Robert Watt. This is a headline only 2 or 3 days ago. He's going to be the highest paid civil servant in the country, 292,000. Now that doesn't seem like a lot, maybe in comparison to soccer players. This is a civil servant. This is someone who works for the Department of Health, and he will be the highest paid civil servant in the world. Why? Well, essentially because no one else will do it. No one else will do it, and you got to pay people for their work. Versus something else that was controversial during the pandemic was Keelings, which you know from your strawberries and your grapes and your blueberries and everything, that during the pandemic back in April, that there was 189 of them were flown from Bulgaria. Now, why are they flown from Bulgaria? Because Irish people refused to do it. Okay, and we can see it there. Migrant labour has been a feature of the domestic economy over the last 20 years. There are jobs in the low-skilled sector in Ireland for which it is difficult to find sufficient local interest. So this whole equilibrium wage rate changes, and it changes massively depending on, again, what you're looking at. Okay, so a couple of things about this. In Ireland, we have this thing called the minimum wage. And what does the minimum wage do? Well, the minimum wage says that it is illegal for an employer to pay someone below the minimum wage. And the minimum wage at the moment is about £10 an hour. So that's what it kind of looks like at the moment. You have an equilibrium wage rate. If you get a minimum wage rate, what does it do? And I'm going to draw this now to make it a little bit easier for you. It pushes down the demand for labor. So you can see here on the right, the demand goes from D1 to D2. So there's a shift left of the demand curve, okay? Because employers who pay your wage don't want to pay people their higher wage. They want to retain their profits, which means there's going to be a shift in demand. They're going to decrease the level of demand, okay? Which is going to shift then down the availability of labor. Now I'm going to kind of draw this right here for the fun of it. So what's happening here? Let me see if this will work down here. Okay, so shapes. What am I looking for? Graphs, X, Y axis. Perfect. Look at this. Look how handy this is. So what's happening here if you have a minimum wage rate? Let's do it again. So here's our money, i.e. our wage, and here's our quantity of labor. Well, generally when a minimum, so again, you need to be able to draw this. This is a minimum wage. If there's a minimum wage, excuse my handwriting here now, I'm holding this tablet on my hand. So if there's a minimum wage, what's happening? To draw this, your supply curve is not going to look like a normal supply curve. Your supply curve will look like this. It'll be a straight line, and then it'll go up. Okay, now what's happening here? This is your supply curve. Okay, all of this area here, irregardless of the wage rate, the quantity supply is going to be the exact same. So irregardless of what people pay, that's going to be the wage rate. And that's going to be the quantity supplied. What's happening in this situation here? Well, in this country, can you pay higher than the minimum wage? Of course you can. Of course you can. So at this point here, this point right here, let's do a different color here. At this point right here, why is this not working? This point right here, this is where kind of the normal law of demand kicks in. So all of this, I suppose you could call it low skilled labor, all getting the minimum wage. Whereas this point here, as everything is increasing, normal law of supply kicks in. Okay, so that's the minimum wage rate. I'm just going to kind of delete a lot of that nonsense that I drew there, just to show you. You want to be able to draw that. You'd want to be able to draw that. Okay, that's the minimum wage rate. Let's get back into this. Right, so that is the minimum wage legislation. I really should have timed this because I was feeling this is going to stop. Let me have a look here now. Anyway, horizontal supply curve. You can also get a supply curve that looks like that. Now, why would you get a supply curve that looks like that, for instance, where essentially it's a straight supply curve, regardless of the wage rate, people are going to get the same amount of money. That's rare, but really you're looking there at maybe there's one big employer in the area, there's no other option, and the one big employer in the area, perhaps it's a monopoly, they pay one wage rate and one wage rate alone. You can leave if you want, but those who stay in the community are stuck on that wage rate. So that's popular for, again, it's for really big employers in a community. Okay. What else we got? We have, restricted entry into profession. So for instance, again, in professional life, there is a particular standard that you might need to get a job. So for instance, example, teachers now require a master's qualification. What does that actually do to the wage rate? Well, actually, or to the equilibrium rate. It just causes a leftward shift in the supply of labor. There's less supply now because when I was a teacher, it took 3 years, I think, to become a teacher if you did arts, whereas now it takes 5 years. So that restricts the entry into profession. It makes the supply curve shift to the left, which and if there's less supply, it means there's an increase in demand. So you can see here the quantity of labor has gone from Q1 to Q2, but the wage is actually increasing. So at less supply, same demand, you can make more money. That's why I'm on such big bucks. Right, so that's restricted entry to profession. All these are in the book anyway, so don't be too worried about this. Advantages of increasing the minimum wage. So the minimum wage rate is very topical, as you can imagine at the moment. I'm just going to double check here now how long is left on this screen. 13 minutes, not long. That's a problem. Okay. Do you know what? I'm going to stop this right now, and then I'm going to put in a part 2 because I have a little bit left to do.